You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor, subscribe to the channel, leave your comments below, and be sure to smash that like button. I know you were one that was early on the Myles Brennan story. Is there any further detail that you have with the whole Myles Brennan situation, the injury, the recovery, et cetera?
In terms of how it happened?
Well, I think everybody knows by now, but to whatever degree you want to say, I mean, we had Dr. Etheridge on the show yesterday, so we kind of have a better sense of the timeline as well. Just, I don't know if there's anything new with that story.
Not necessarily on my end. Yeah, I don't know what Dr. Etheridge said. He'd obviously be the expert, but, obviously he injured himself, not exactly in a football capacity, on a trip. And, yeah, I know he told, people close to him, they told me that, he said, hey, I want to be back by the Bama game. I'm going to be back. But, I don't know if that's exactly realistic. And again, but it's not like he's going to come back and probably just take the job, mid-season in November or anything like that. So it's definitely one of those situations where I think LSU just has to operate like they will not have Myles Brennan this season. If they happen to have him for depth later in the year, that's fantastic. But I just don't think it's something you can really account for.
Brodie, do they have any options aside from the two scholarship quarterbacks? And I know, as Ed Ogeron mentioned, Matt O'Dowd, the walk-on?
Yeah, I mean, Matt O'Dowd is next up. And, yeah, he's somebody who is a little more than your average, walk-on. He's preferred walk-on, played high-level high school football. But I have two thoughts on that. One, I think if something came down to that, I wouldn't be surprised if you see them get really creative with, one of those playmakers, whether it be a Kirkland or something. But two, and I think more importantly, if LSU's really down to its third quarterback, if that's really where they are, I'm not sure who it is matters. Yeah, I think at that point things went wrong, and this season's not a wash, but it's a mess anyway. So it's like it might be a moot point, which I know is a boring answer, but it might be the real one.
No, it makes sense. On the offensive side of the ball, we would have been talking a lot about the quarterback battle in camp. That's not a battle anymore. So what is the position battle on the offensive side that you're most interested to see?
It's the one that we're like on year 4 of being like, I wonder who the running back's going to be going into camp. But still, I think this year feels more interesting than a lot of ways because you're just at this, man, are those guys ever going to break through at running back? Where Ty Davis-Price, I have heard the same things Ogeron said, that he is in the best shape he's been. And I think the vibe I've got from people in the program is, yeah, Ty Davis-Price is probably going to be the main guy getting a bulk of the carries, and he's the trustworthy one. It seems like he averages 4 or 5 yards in his sleep. But I think John Emery, I've had people in the program say, this is going to be, he's actually going to be the guy. He's finally going to do it. And I'm still we all have our list of guys like this, I think, where it's like, wait and see until you actually prove it to me. Yeah. We all know he's absurd talent. He could be as good as anyone in the country at running back if he wants to be. But I think you'll see him get involved more because he can do more than a Davis-Price can. Maybe you'll see him more in those passing sets and things like that and getting more involved. And I want to see what happens with those freshmen. Corey Kiner, I'm really high on. So it's just, Ogeron's said, I think, at least 3 times this offseason. He's called it a disappointment, which he doesn't usually say that often about a position group. So it's such a weird group that I think I'm following that because the talent's there, but are they ever really going to achieve what they hope?
Yeah. And look, LSU's never been short on talent at the skill spots. Exactly. If it's running back or receiver, it's finding the guys that can go perform. You've got those guys at receiver as well. A giant question mark for me is the offensive line because, you get everybody back, and I've said this a bunch, Brodie, so I'd love your thought on it. Just because you return everybody from a unit that wasn't very good doesn't mean you're better or you're automatically good at it. So what's your assessment of not only that first unit, but what's behind them as well?
Yeah, I think we're on the same page there where I don't know how I feel about that first unit because as much as it's like you say, everyone's back, if you go game by game, it was a really bizarre offensive line where, yeah, there are probably 4 games where I'm like, oh, they played great. South Carolina comes to mind. I think I remember them playing really well against Florida. There's some games where they look great, but there are probably 4 or 5 other games where they were a clear weakness. So and maybe that evens out, and maybe, hey, they're in the middle, and then you bring everyone back and they'll improve. That, we saw that in 2019, sure, but I'm not exactly going into the season as utterly confident there as say Ed Ogeron is saying it's a huge strength. I don't know if I'm there, where I like the talent. I think Ed Ingram's really good. Deculus is trustworthy. I like Liam Shanahan. Still, I don't know if I'm necessarily looking at this line as like, man, those are a bunch of studs. So I'm with you there, I think, to some extent. And then, I think you're right. The least sexy storyline, but maybe the most important storyline of this fall is, are they going to get any depth there? And, at least before they had Cam Wire as that swing man. Now I don't know if there's a single guy there where you're like, I am 100% confident he is the next, like that he can really succeed coming in next. They love Anthony Bradford's talent, but he's been up and down and disappointing and all that, where I do think he turned a corner this spring. I do think they're really happy with him right now. So he's obviously your next one. And I know they really like Garrett Dellinger, but still he's an 18, 19-year-old true freshman tackle, probably one of the few positions you never want to have to play a freshman. So it's like, I just really want to see, can any of those Doomervilles or Martinez's or Xavier Hills actually make that jump they're waiting for, And maybe Brad Smith will get more out of that. I don't know, but I'm with you. I'm not exactly sold in the first team line, and they just need people to develop behind them.
Brodie Miller's with us on Twitter at Brodie A. Miller. Let's flip it over to defense. I'm curious your thought. LSU last year was talented defensively, but they played terribly. Do you believe that it is as simple as saying if you improve the communication that was lacking there with Bo Pelini, that this defense is just back up among the top 3 in the SEC and the top 10 to 15 in the country?
It's a great question. I think it's the thing I struggle with most this entire offseason because, I think it's the idea that if you just look at the experience, the talent, the upside, it's like you said, there's no reason where if you can just eliminate that, for lack of a better word, incompetency last year, those absurd coverage busts and all those things. There's no reason this defense shouldn't be one of the 5 best in the SEC. So you think like that, and you have to be like, all right, if they can just be competent, they're there. But you can't just erase all that. You can't just assume a guy who was, a D is suddenly a B plus. It doesn't always work like that. So they've lost the ability to get the benefit of the doubt. But at the same time, just the on paper, like quantifiable way I look at sports a lot. It's just like, that D line is so deep and so talented that you have a hard time seeing any way that's not a strength if it's used right. Those corners are 2 of the 5 best in the country. And I know safety and linebacker are still huge question marks, and as they should be. But at the same time, I'm still thinking like they're much deeper than they were. They're more talented, I think, than they were a year ago. So it's a non-answer, but I do lean toward, I think they've improved those communication areas. And I think if that happens, I think the defense should be a strength in all honesty. But I don't want to just erase all that stuff from last year.
Well, they can't possibly be worse. And that's like it literally, you'd have to be the worst again. And so I don't think that's possible. The real question is how much better can they be? So where do you see the biggest strength defensively? Where do you see the biggest question mark?
I think strength, I guess I'm lying to myself. You have to say corner just because you have 2 guys that are just that good, and,
right.
And I still want to see Stingley get healthy and make sure he's 100%. And Ricks, I still want to see like more overall stuff. But I think you have to say corner. But D-line is, I can't think of a more deep D-line in the SEC off the top of my head. And the idea that like some of that depth are guys that also have upside that might take a huge leap. So I love having that mix of depth, experience, and upside. That's what I love, where it's like, you can trust in Andre Anthony, but you also know B.J. Ojulari might take a leap, and I think that's a really healthy place to be. Question mark, I don't even put linebacker in a question mark as heavily as safety because, I feel confident they got 4 guys they can at least play there, they can trust. Safety, you got to be a little, doubting just because, hey, Jay Ward, I think I'm on the bandwagon of Jay Ward. He really impressed me, and just the buzz is strong, but still a guy you haven't seen starting safety in an SEC football game. And that second spot is just wide open where, I was kind of surprised when Ogeron said Major Burns is the front runner in that second spot. I was, but, maybe they like him. And there's always a deep down part of me that thinks Sage Ryan will eventually at some point become that guy because the talent he has. Still, you're depending on transfers and freshmen, and there's just not certainty there. So I think safety has to be the biggest question.
All right, before you go, we know Cade York is awesome, All-American, grows a possibility. Who's going to punt?
I will pretend I have, great information there, and I think sometimes I've reached an almost lazy point where I'm just like, I've learned to just kind of trust Greg McMahon knows how to recruit these positions, and Peyton Todd is the top-ranked punter that I assume is going to come in and win that job. And I know I think Avery Atkins has punted, and he's trying to compete for that as well. I know there's a lot of guys that can punt, but I just kind of have almost lazily defaulted to, I assume it's Peyton Todd, and I assume Greg McMahon, when he hones in on a recruit, it's kind of been 100% hit rate lately.
He has been really, really. I mean, you go back to finding Cole Tracy, and the run has actually been really, really impressive since.
I mean, you could argue he's the best coach that LSU's had the last 5 years at just what he does. You know what I mean?
They have been incredibly consistent there. There's no question. They'll hit the practice field on Friday. You can read all about it at The Athletic. He's Brodie Miller. He's on Twitter at Brodie A. Miller. Y'all give him a follow. Thanks for a couple of minutes, man. Appreciate you as always.
Always a pleasure, man. Take care.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.